Hi, everybody. I'm honored today to be introducing architect Chris Downey, who's joining us as a mentor for our school's third annual Blind Design Workshop, which is taking place this week in collaboration with the Virginia Department for the Blind and Vision Impaired. I first met Chris in 2009 while participating as a student instructor in a design workshop like this one, organized by the National Federation for the Blind. In our first interactions, which took place a year after he lost his sight, Chris shared critical reflections about his experience and its influence on his personal and professional life, which have irreversibly affected my interest in multisensory practice and design teaching. Following 20 years of traditional sighted experience in architectural practice, designing award-winning custom residences in cultural institutions, Chris has refocused his work on enriching the built environment for the visually impaired. One of the few practicing blind architects in the world, he's established partnerships with design firms like Smith Group, Gensler, HOK, Bjarke Ingels Group, and Think Design to complete projects like the University of Pittsburgh Vision and Rehabilitation Tower, the Salesforce Transit Center in San Francisco, a multisensory master plan for the Philadelphia Zoo, and the Sustainability Pavilion at Expo Dubai. In addition to his practice, Chris has also served on the California Commission on Disability Access, has taught design studio at the University of California, Berkeley, is an avid rower, and speaks internationally as an advocate for accessibility and a critic of ocular centrism in design. Chris, on behalf of the faculty and student body, welcome to Virginia Tech. The floor is yours. Thanks.
Thank you, Andrew, and thanks for that introduction, and thanks for keeping this little spark alive for all these years. It's wonderful for you to bring that to Virginia Tech in the state of Virginia as an ongoing program. So congratulations to everyone involved with that. And a big hello to we have some of the students here with us? Give us an audible hello. Where are you? Okay. All right, so for those in the program, the Blind Design Workshop program, that don't see very well or don't see at all, I apologize. I have no excuse, but I'm the world's worst describer of imagery on the slides, so I'll forget to do that, but I'll do my best, and hopefully you'll get the meaning of what I'm talking about, and even if you don't see the imagery, but I'll do my best. So here we go.
Slide 3, hospital bed surrounded by questions.
So, as Andrew said, I did lose my sight, all sight unexpectedly, about 16 years ago this time, and went from full sight to basically full sight to no sight through the course of a surgery. And everything else about the surgery was fine. That's not the point of this. But what was interesting was about coming out of that and both reimagining my life, my personal life, but also my professional life as an architect. And
slide 4, insert new operating system.
And as those in the room that are what we call rehabilitation trainers, or it could be for orientation mobility, it could be adaptive technology, life skills, all sorts of things that go into the training for people that have experienced sight loss. Unfortunately, you can't just download the new operating system, the new non-visual operating system. You've got to go through a lot of rigorous training. It takes a lot of time, persistence, good instructors, and a lot of just intensive focus to be able to get through that. But it's just an absolutely key thing to being able to get out independently in the world, going about your daily life, and having dreams and aspirations, passions, and everything else like all our sighted peers.
Slide 5, orientation and mobility training.
So a key one in that aspect, especially for me, was orientation and mobility training. And that's the process of learning to get around effectively with the use of a long white cane. And it's not just to know how to use a cane, but it's how to sort of to know of your position in space without the benefit of sight, and to put together a strategy of how you're to get to where you're trying to get to. And there's a lot of problem solving involved, but there's a lot of technique that comes through the cane and other things that are happening around you that you're trained to pay attention to listen to I also lost all sense of smell. You might have a sense of where you are and you're going down the street when you pass a bakery. So all sorts of things you wouldn't necessarily think about as sensory inputs that could be effective for you to getting around without sight. But the orientation
Slide
mobility
6. Chris walking in San Francisco.
was really critical for me. And it was really kind of interesting because as I hit it really hard. I was really passionate about it. Coming out of the hospital, I couldn't wait to get started. I went back to the office I was working at within a month of losing my sight, actually a month to the day of the surgery, to start figuring it out. There are no books on how to be a blind architect, so I figured might as well go figure it out yourself and get into space. So the great thing about people in this room, they're incredibly creative. And to be an architect, to be a designer, you're built on optimism, built on the possibility of contributing, of solving problems, of creating wonderful places to be, to exist in, to work in, to live in. And that optimism I found to be really important in my rehabilitation and all sorts of things, thinking about life and also about architecture. So I hit it really hard. And I was starting to imagine things when I was a student, especially in undergraduate school. I was taught to obsess on the environment around. And I'm sure students here at Virginia Tech, if you're architecture students, you're just taught to look at everything and study it. You take nothing for granted. You look at the physical thing of what's there, why it's there, what it's doing, how it's working. It might be how it's built, or it might be what its place is in the city or whatever else, and how all that contributes towards the nature of the environment that you're in and that you might imagine and design in the future. So in doing that, it was really, I was learning so much. I was out in the streets so much, so quickly. I was back in the streets in San Francisco within 6 months. And it was amazing being in the same streets, the same place, the same person. Only things were so different. Both the way I interacted with the city, the way I interacted with buildings, the way I understood things, but also the people around me. I am originally from the South. I moved out of the South years ago, and I had to learn not to be nice to everybody I passed on the street, not to say hello, good morning, have a nice day. And it was a hard thing to adjust to. But what was great about losing my sight was it was like being a Southerner again. Walking down the street, whether it's in San Francisco or Oakland, people are wishing me a nice day, go for a brother, have a good one. Power to you, power on. It's great. It was like being a Southerner again. But I was the same person. Nothing had changed. People didn't used to talk to me when I was fully sighted, walking around. And it made me realize the difference was my cane. It's like, there's nothing else that changed. I didn't look any different. A couple of years older, but not much. And
Slide 7. Badass chicken.
And actually, it made me realize that, sorry, I skipped my story there. It used to be when I was sighted, part of being a Southerner, I always wanted to get out of people's way while walking down the sidewalk, and it bothered me. It's like, I was always the guy getting out of the way. And then, it's like when I was sighted, when I turned blind in mid-months, I just walked down the street, it's like, it's been ages since I had to get out of anybody's way. So when I was sighted, I kind of sucked at pedestrian chicken, but now, as the strain was, the badass chicken. So I screwed the timing of my joke there. But anyway, it really pointed out how transformative it can be and changes your place in the city. But it wasn't so much that.
Slide 8. Diameter.
The cane itself, as I was saying, that was the only thing that was different. It was as if in grabbing the cane, yeah, it's a sign of blindness, but it's a tool. It's a tool that I use actively every moment walking around. I never walk without my cane. And just being, except in the house. So I'm using it constantly. And that's what people see. And so it's almost like, yeah, I'm the same person. I think the same way. I'm processing things differently. But in the world, the way the world sees me, it's like my avatar in a game where I've got this cane and people are going to engage with me differently. I put the cane down, and nobody knows the difference. So it's a really fascinating thing of the power of the cane as a mobility tool, as a prosthetic device, but it also sort of changes your place in the society around you. But with it, there's so much power in that little, simple device.
Slide 9. Outside.
So all that sort of pointed out to all sorts of things that I was learning through the benefit of sight loss. It wasn't necessarily about, holy crap, I can't see. It's like all of a sudden, all these other ways of experiencing the city, the urban form, the buildings, our landscape, all sorts of things. It was changing my awareness within that, and then ultimately changing how I might think about the creation of those spaces, creation of those environments, and thinking about it in different ways than I had when I was sighted, which is far more of an ocular-centric approach to design.
Slide 10. Architecture beyond sight.
So, contrary to what some people might think, it wasn't about, imagining architecture without sight or in the dark. I have no light perception, nothing like that. It really became about taking architecture beyond sight. What I had learned through that process of orientation mobility training was that I put it together with my architectural training. Unfortunately, my architectural training was way too much about my eyes, about what I could see, the way you see the environment around you. What I learned through sight loss was the power of multisensory design, of all the other sensory experiences that come along with it. And you think about it, your eyeballs don't go for a tour around the building. They come around with the rest of the rest of your body. It's about your body in space, experiencing the sounds, the smells, the textures around you, all sorts of things that contribute to the quality of the space, the performance of the space, and inevitably your enjoyment of the space. And it made me realize that it's a lot more enriching. If you think about exhibit design, it's much more immersive. It's all in exhibit design today. It's all about immersive exhibit space. It's about pulling the spectator, the user into the exhibit, into the space, to lose sort of the outside world and really just get enveloped in that experience at that moment. So it's actually, it came to be about adding to at least my understanding of architecture. Can't speak for everyone, but it really enriched it. It didn't diminish it in any way. It made it a richer experience, and it gave me much more to design with, to make for more delightful and enjoyable buildings for everyone. Not just for using those as landmarks and strategies for people that are blind to better navigate the space, but just a better environment for everyone.
Slide 11. Architecture and the senses.
So yeah, it's all about architecture and the senses. There's some things in the work that I do that's more about code, but most of it is about multisensory design and how to strategize that. Also, sometimes it's about cognitive systems, about how you can organize space to be more logical and intuitive in how you might use it and flow through it. But the majority of it is about multisensory design.
Slide 12. Lighthouse for the blind and visually impaired. San Francisco, California.
So I'm focusing in here a little bit on one project in particular, the Lighthouse for the blind and visually impaired in San Francisco, project that I worked on with Mark Cavaniero Architects in San Francisco. And it's for an organization that serves people with vision impairment. That's where I went for my training when I lost my sight, all sorts of training. So they're serving people that are blind and visually impaired, and half of their staff are blind and visually impaired, including their executive director. So it's a deep space for sort of a blind awareness, a blind sensitivity, and a blind way of being, and quite frankly, blind empowerment or blind pride, and trying to find proud examples and demonstrations of blindness in society today. So it's a very significant client, and they were to occupy the top 3 floors of an 11-story building on Market Street in downtown San Francisco. And so had the opportunity to work with so many of the clients, the people at the Lighthouse who are blind, together with the architects and engineers, all sorts of people, all in sort of pulling to this environment together. And in thinking about it, I think maybe this is a a view of the lobby of the lighthouse. Is that a view photograph of the entry?
Slide 13. Lighthouse
There we go.
reception on floor 10.
There we go. So this is the reception level, reception area on the 10th floor, the middle of the 3 floors, which is strategic, but I'll explain that later. So the idea was when you would come up to the 10th floor on the elevators, the building common elevator, you come out and turn to the west, and you walk out into the open office area, open reception area. And it's on a big rectangular floor plate running north to south, and this entry was right in the center, and you're facing west. And into this place, that moment was the moment that, as the executive director said, this could be the first step that this person who's experiencing sight loss, their first step into their new possibility, into their future. It could be a step that's full of anxiety, of trepidation, maybe fear, and he wanted to contradict that, to make it exciting, to make it positive, to defy expectations, to be surrounded by all sorts of chatter, excitement, joy, conversation, laughter, that it was a place full of life and possibility, and he wanted to express that from the moment you stepped in. So whether it was what you could see, what you could hear, what you could feel, that it would really exude all of that. A big part of that was sound, acoustics, the acoustic environment. Our students today in the program had a wonderful demonstration and tour of acoustics, and thinking about acoustics not just about not hearing the sound from the next room or from outside, but the quality of the experience. Does it support text, speech intelligibility? Does it give good character, good color to the room? How does that, how can we do that? And so he wanted to really exude that for the minute you step in and really make it a multi-sensory thing. So if you're sighted, you could step in, you could see that there's this open space and there's a stair straight ahead that's going up and stairs going down. And it was designed in a way that if you couldn't see them, you could hear them. So the stairs are all made of wood, so you could hear footfalls and cane taps, maybe even dog paws as they're going up and down the stairs. Maybe you could hear conversations or laughter above or below, so that even if you couldn't see it, you could be aware that there's these other floors above and below you, and maximize the opportunity for great conversation and this excitement of new possibilities. Back on the multi-sensory strategy, even right around the corner as you walk into your right, there's a training kitchen. So you might hear the sounds of things happening in the kitchen or the smell of cookies coming out from the training kitchen and realize, oh, I'm blind. They're teaching people to cook here. I didn't know that was possible. So it really sort of, from that moment you step in, start defying those expectations and expanding your imagination of what's possible, given the right training and the right community of people around you. So I talked a little bit about the speech intelligibility and the acoustics in there, and I wanted to share some work that we've been doing with an acoustic engineer in San Francisco. And I continue to work with him on other projects. But this is the first time we had the opportunity to take what we had been doing in their sound lab to model through digital space, the sound of a building before it was built. And they use it for designing concert halls and places like that, where you're really trying to get to a particular performance level, so that it achieves the type of sound you're after. We were talking about that this morning in this wonderful talk with Michael about the different sounds and how different concert halls support different types of music, all about how it was written, the nature of it. Often it was because the music was written in those spaces or for those spaces back in historical days. And they're best in that environment because that's how they were hearing it and they were designing for it. But at any rate, you can really design the sound of space. And luckily, this company, Arup, they have sound labs where they can basically do high-end computer renderings of what it's going to sound like inside that space. And you can change the materiality, the shape, all sorts of things, and hear the difference while it's still in digital space and come to some agreement. So we spent a lot of time in there with the executive director and other leaders at the Lighthouse who were blind, and we spent hours and hours in the sound lab listening to the different performance qualities of the space, both the timbre or color of the space, but also listening for speech intelligibility, the ability to hear, to have a lively, fun space, but still have good supporting conversation. So I'm going to play a couple examples of that. So here we go. This first one is going to be a rather raw, untreated space, a lot of concrete. I think I'm...
Slide 14, Erupt Sound Lab.
Okay, that's, I think, is their sound lab.
Slide 15, Raw Acoustic Condition.
And this will be a lot of reverberation, not good speech intelligibility, a lot of things that aren't working well here. It's just concrete on the floor, sheetrock on the walls, concrete ceiling. Not a very fun place, and you can get a sense of what that would sound like. And here we go. The first sound will be, it's kind of loud, I'm sorry about this. It's the sound of the elevator as those doors open up into the space.
Raw Acoustic Condition.
Good morning. Welcome to the Lighthouse.
You can hear how his sound was, speech was bundled together, one very person. So that was like the raw condition.
Raw Acoustic Condition.
And the next one will be a more tuned condition where we added wood slat ceilings above, put some sound attenuation, bat insulation above that in some areas. We added areas of carpet in the seating area around the reception desk. But we left the main circulation space spine as polished concrete. So what you were hearing was my cane tap on the ground. They recorded that and then brought it into digital space and put it along the spine as it would move through the space. But it was really important to me and to this client to have a hard surface for the main circulation areas. So with your cane tap hitting the ground, you listen not to that sound on the surface, but as that sound goes out into space, hits surfaces, walls, ceilings, and comes back to your ears, and you can start hearing the space, hearing some of the proportions, and giving you some clues as to how to move around through the space. But you can also hear others walking towards you, or as you're catching up to them, you can hear their footfalls. If you're on carpet, you're not going to hear that as much. So we investigated different materials, but this polished concrete worked really well. And so any of the primary circulations that moves through the building use that polished concrete. So now we'll play it again. Sorry, I shouldn't have talked between them, because it's good to hear the two side by side. And unfortunately, we're not in the sound lab, so you lose a lot of the richness of the difference, but hopefully you can hear some. In particular, if you listen for speech intelligibility from the receptionist as he welcomes you to the Lighthouse.
Slide 16, Preferred Acoustic Condition.
Here we go.
Preferred Acoustic Condition.
Good morning. Welcome to the Lighthouse.
It's still a little muddled, but hopefully you can tell the difference with speech intelligibility. So we use that a lot. There's some things I would
Slide
like
17,
to push
Canter and
further.
Shade.
I think we could have done more with transitions from one space to another by lowering the ceilings or changing the materials so that you could be more aware when you're passing from one space into another. Still, some of that works effectively in this space. I just think we could have pushed that a little bit further. Well, what's great about this is it's really a design tool working with that system. It gives a way to design in acoustics that, face it, we can draw. We're really good, architects are really good at drawing the visual world. We know how to do that. We can be hyper-realistic. We can be fantastical about it, all sorts of things. Lots of power in those visual tools. We don't have a lot of good acoustic tools. A lot of it comes through knowledge that's even hard to share and challenging to learn. But it's important stuff to do. But what's really wonderful about this system that they've developed is the ability to hear the space, critique it, try it again, just like you would visually, to work towards the effects that you're after. And ultimately, when I'm designing buildings like this and new works that I'm working on, really trying to design the soundscape of the building, anticipating what it's going to sound like as you move through the building, and see if we can build to multi-sensory placemaking so you can hear, feel, sense where you are at particular places in the building and really build those as not just visual places, but multi-sensory places. So acoustics are a huge part of that. Another part is important to the world. As people think about it, for people that are blind, they assume touch. And it's not that we go around touching the walls. We actually don't want to do that. That's not an effective way to get around. But there are places in a building where you know people will touch it, or there's a good chance they will. And it became important to me to think about what those moments were and what you communicate at that point of contact. So in this case at the Lighthouse, this is design of a handrail for this new stair that we put in to link the 3 floors together. And it came from an experience that I had at a gallery in upstate New York, and I was really surprised by a handrail to go down to a lower level. And it was really surprising at how it fit my hand so incredibly well, and I'd never felt a handrail like that. And it made me think about how you could communicate sort of the quality of the space, the quality of the design, the delight of the environment through the sense of touch. That the delight in architecture isn't just visual. It could be that sense of generosity in the handrail. And at the Lighthouse, they started referring to this handrail as a handshake, because I've described it as being the handshake of a building. It's the building reaching out, shake your hand, welcome you to the Lighthouse. And it's a surprising grip that is unlike any grip you've ever had, but it fits the hand really well. In the design process.
Slide 18, handrail design process.
We went through multiple iterations. I was drawing and wax sticks on top of embossed drawings, draw all sorts of things. And it frustrated me because it's not about the drawing, it's about how it fits in my hand. So the architects I was working with, they decided to do 3D prints of all the different handrail sections we were testing. So it wasn't about what it looked like in the drawing, it's about how it fit our hand, and we could get all sorts of other people to come and experience it that way and get their assessment of the quality of the handrail or the building's handshake, and then developed it to the materiality, which ended up being a wood handrail.
Slide 19, visual contrast at Lighthouse stair.
But we also worked on the visual contrast. Only 8 to 10% of the legally blind in the U.S. have no sight. I'm in that camp. Most have some sight. And then they're very susceptible to the quality of the visual environment, what they can see. And if the visual environment is designed to maximize visual accessibility, something you won't hear about much here at school. But it's something that's really important that all relies on high levels of visual contrast. It's about avoiding glares off surfaces, shielding light bulbs so you don't see directly into surfaces, controlling shadows, odd patterns, all sorts of things that can go into creating a more visually accessible environment. And one thing that was critical is seeing the edge of a stair in this environment. So we had a solid wood stair that the treads, the flat part that your foot goes on, and the riser where you step up, all those were the same wood as the architects had designed it. And I realized that was going to be a problem. If you had a low vision condition and you were looking down from the top, it'll look like a brown slide going straight down. You wouldn't see any individual step. If you were going up, you wouldn't be able to see where each nose of the stair tread was. So we worked to develop a stainless steel nosing strip that had grooves to give a little texture to it. And then with a polished stainless steel at the first and last nosing strip, sort of the most important, that's a polished surface which provided 70% lumens contrast. So it would really pop out and you could see it. But there was also created a little glare, and we were concerned about that. So all the other stairs, we sandblasted the stainless steel to come up with a brush finish that provided 50% lumens contrast, which was still a benefit to those with low vision, but didn't have the risk of that shinier metallic finish at the top. So that's how we approached that.
Slide 20. Photo of stair arriving at level 9.
And so this is that stair that came down. It was lucky this came in. We were having a conversation over lunch about stair design, and someone noticed a stair here on campus that had the underside of the stair exposed. That if you're blind, your cane goes underneath it. And how do you find a stair if your cane goes underneath it? You find it with your body. I found a few of them with my head, right there at a landing or something. So it's a real issue, and it's embedded.
Slide 21. Stair clearance diagram.
It's embedded in our codes, but architects don't always like those codes, don't want to do them. Sometimes the building was designed before those codes existed. But in this diagram, it shows the requirements for minimum head clearance under an obstruction, and then there are different ways of protecting underneath that with cane rails, all sorts of other devices you can use to do that.
Oakland Ironworks.
Oh, sorry, I want to go back. Oh, this was one that I found the hard way.
Slide 20. Photo of stair arriving at level 9.
So here you can see how the stair comes down, and it's instead of the stair just coming down to meet the floor and then it's open underneath it, we basically built a little plinth that the last few stairs go through when it turns a direction. And then it provides a seating edge all the way around underneath the stair. So it becomes, it protects the underside of the stair, but it also offers a moment for some rest or to sit down and have a conversation with someone right there along the walk. So it's taking something that is a code need, a code requirement, and turning into something of benefit for the occupants of the building.
Slide 21. Stair clearance diagram. Oakland Ironworks. Slide 22. Visual contrast at Lighthouse signage.
So then also a lot of work with the signage. I want to keep moving and taking too much time here.
Slide 23. Finding room signs. Slide 24. Washington State School for the Blind. View of building from southwest.
So now I move on quickly to another new project. This is the only other real project I'm going to focus on, but I think it's one that's kind of interesting. It just opened this last summer, August of 2023, for the Washington State School for the Blind. And this project in particular is for students, high school students that have graduated. But they haven't developed the independent living skills they need to succeed on their own, whether they're going to college, a technical school, going to work, or whatever. For whatever reason, could be that they just lost their sight. It could be that they lived at home and everything was done for them. Clean their room, take care of it, clean up after them, whatever, cook for them. It might be a loving place at home, but it's not going to get them ready to be independent on their own and have their own life. So this is a place for them to get away, get some independence, yet still have some mentoring, some coaching, some guidance to learn how to cook on their own, to learn how to shop, grocery shop, to manage a budget, all the skills that need to go into being independent. So it's a year-long academic program. It's no classes. They live there on campus in this new facility, have their own room. They're responsible for sort of managing everything on their own and getting on about their college classes or whatever they're doing at that time. It's 9 different units. But there's a lot of community spaces because it's not about them just getting away. It's about them building community with other people going through the same thing, learning from other peers that are blind and cooking with them, hanging out in the courtyard, barbecuing, doing all sorts of things to sort of share together and to learn together and learn from each other. So there's a lot that's happening in a very simple program. And also on the second floor, there's the Department of Blind Services for the state of Washington. So there they deal with adaptive technology, orientation mobility training, is for the broader community. The students there also take advantage of that adjacency to have that training, some of the equipment and things when they need it, to have that kind of training right up above in that same building. So I'll just share a few of the images. I think, is there an image of the front door or the entry to the place?
It's of the whole building.
Okay, yeah.
Slide 25, accessible entrance.
So here's the accessible entry. There's a discussion this morning about how you can know where the front door is of a building. There's lots of different ways of doing that. There's things you can do, the shape of the architecture for the sound. We did some of that here, but we also extended a contrasting color concrete strip as the main approach to the front door. That also has a different texture. So if you're low vision, you could see as you're going up the sidewalk where the entry is to the front door of the building. If you're a cane user and have no sight, no functional sight, you can feel the difference, the haptic feedback, that sense of touch as it comes through the cane into the palm of your hand to recognize that's where the front door is. So it's kind of like rolling out the red carpet at an old hotel to welcome people to the front door. So I take it as a nice thing to do, a nice sort of generous way to welcome the public in, but also build that as a landmark into the environment around.
Slide 26, shared kitchen.
So there's a shared kitchen. They're cooking on their own, shopping on their own. There's an accessible station. There's a typical height situation. They have some students that are of different heights, obviously, but also some that are blind and in a wheelchair. So we need to have accessible kitchen workstations as well. It's very social. It's open, so people can be sitting there, having conversations with people cooking. Their cane notches at the ends of the work surface so they can leave their cane standing up at the edge and go on about their cooking. People could be at that counter doing some studies, surfing the web, doing whatever. Let's see.
Slide 27, pleasant acoustical environment.
I did a lot of work with the acoustics in there, trying to get that to be a dynamic kitchen, but something that was functionally so you could really hear what you need to hear. And also having an open space for the living room, sort of social space beside it. So that was all working well together.
Slide 28, comfortable place for respite.
Good places to relax. Going through all that, going through this training, this independence, sort of establishing that, it's hard work. It could be exhausting. So really providing good places for respite throughout the center, whether it's inside or outside.
Slide 29, tunable and dimmable lighting.
In the individual rooms, this is a place where it's like your space. And a lot of people with low vision conditions need different types of light, different color temperatures of light. Luckily, these days, the new technologies with LED lighting and the controls, not only can you dim the light, but you can manipulate the color temperature of the light. So the students can really tune the light to maximize their visual acuity in that space. And sometimes it's just to the level of comfort. Some colors, some levels of light can be painful or distracting to the eyes. So really, there's a principle of universal design about flexibility of use, so we can modify it to suit your needs. This is modifying the visual lighting environment to suit your needs.
Slide 30, access to nature.
Also, there's restful spaces and fun spaces outside. Here, this is in Vancouver, Washington, just north of Portland, Oregon, and it rains there a lot. So we designed in a water feature that collects water coming off the roof and goes through basically an art piece to celebrate the sound of water coming off the roof to animate this courtyard, places to sit. There's a sensory garden. That there are windows that open up towards the kitchen into this dining area, that the smells of things growing in this sensory garden can be sort of color the environment inside. You can enjoy it when you're outside. They grow the plants, they manage that. There's a really cool, since it does rain a lot, there's a little covering over the table that automatically opens and closes. If it's raining, it closes up so you can have a dry place to be outside and listen to the rain. enjoy the rain, but be undercover. It's not cold and rainy, it's just kind of cool, if not warm and rainy there. So anyway, just really thinking about that experience of being there, relaxing and learning from and sharing with your friends.
Slide 31, Wayfinding Inclusivity Project.
So in the same neck of the woods in Redmond, Washington, this is a very different type of project I worked on with a group doing some work for Microsoft. And what's really exciting about Microsoft and other technology companies is that they want the best, broadest talent base they can possibly get. They're constantly asking of their architects for things well beyond code requirement, because they're needing to employ people that have disabilities, all different types of disabilities, to have diverse workforces, to get that expertise into their products, into their manufacturing, all of the things that goes into the development of their technologies and their hardware. And they need an environment that's suitable for this very diverse workforce. So this is happening time and time and again in technology companies today. They're the ones that are kind of tend to push the envelope for the environment design of universal or inclusive spaces. And in this case, they had just rolled out a new wayfinding signage system on campus, only to find out that a big part of their population, a lot of their blind employees, didn't work for them. They didn't know it was there. There's nothing about it that addressed the needs of their blind and visually impaired employees, of which they had numerous. And they wanted to come up with something that would be far more inclusive and work for everyone.
Slide 32, photos of user group testing.
So we developed all sorts of new signage systems to go on campus, everything from tactile signs at intersections so that you can have tactile information to have arrows pointing out different ways for different buildings that would be in raised characters and also in Braille, and lots of nuance I won't go into, but even systems for, you can't just have that on the side of the road and expect anybody to find it. But on a campus like this, you could develop a pattern language so that if you went across a certain type of surface, it would call your attention to the presence of a sign if you worked there and it had been explained how that would work, which that was the opportunity on a corporate campus like this or a campus like Virginia Tech. So anytime you would come across a surface like this, it's discernible. You could then go off to the edge of the path if you were confused or looking for a particular building to then find the signpost that might point you off in the right direction. Other things that were map kiosks, things that had a tactile and visual map that could be out on campus that were durable. They're created through UV printers, and they work well in outdoor environments. And coming up with both a physical condition that worked for people in wheelchairs, using other mobility devices, but also working for people that with little to no sight. So it was worked for in high visual contrast, but also through touch. So everybody could use the same map. It wasn't just a map over here for some people and a map over there for other people. Everybody could use this map.
Slide 33, inclusive map and directional indicator mockup.
And so that last image was really showing a mock-up test, and it was really important to include the users. So we had a broad spectrum of users, of employees at Microsoft to test out these things as we mocked them up. And then critiqued them, and they changed a lot based on what we learned through those workshops.
Slide 34, UCB Social Justice and Design Architecture Studio.
So here I thought I'd share a couple images, some work that a studio, architecture studio, graduate studio at UC Berkeley, taught in the spring of 22. And here, the first project was a project that was...
Slide 35, haptic perception handrail.
That was really, well, the first part of that was like the handrail design at the Lighthouse. It had the students design a handrail for a BART station, a subway station, right in front of the Lighthouse for the Blind in San Francisco. And the idea was just for them to experiment and design the nature of that grip, what you could communicate, what the opportunities might be, and thinking about a handrail other than a stock item ordered from a catalog, delivered and attached to the wall. And here, review for that project was a 3D print. Not only did they have to design the handrail itself, but also the bracket that would hold the handrail to the wall. And the idea being that when you're using a handrail, whether you're sighted or not, nobody really sees the bracket that holds the handrail in place. Sometimes they have sharp edges, don't feel very good when you hit it. So others are more rounded. And so the idea was, how can you let that bracket contribute towards that experience and that sense of care, the quality of that handrail experience? It's just something that's so rudimentary, a very forgotten thing about handrail, but what's the real opportunity within that? And to judge it based on 3D full-size prints of that thing. One person actually cooked hers. It was a fabulous thing. It wasn't a 3D print, and it was almost like, this is gonna be crazy, but it was one of the most fabulous things. Each grip along the way was a little bit different. It was molded, and it was as if it was someone else's hand you're grabbing as you're going up. It was changing, but it's just stunningly delightful at each grip along the way.
Slide 36, acoustic impulse response.
Other things we worked on were designing the sound of the canopy over the subway entry. There was just stairs that had no covering over it. And it's very hard to find it if you're blind. There's no acoustic feedback to help out. It was kind of lost out there. And all the materiality around it was the same brick. So it was very difficult to find the stop at the top of the stairs to go down. So we worked with an acoustic designer to co-teach the class to design a shape of a canopy to provide acoustic feedback to someone approaching it on approach from the Lighthouse for the Blind. So it was a very sort of rarefied thing, but it was an interesting thing to think about how to use acoustics to shape architecture, to shape it towards a particular acoustic goal you were after. Let that lead the design as opposed to the appearance of that canopy or that shelter.
Slide 37, acoustic impulse response plus.
And some of the students did other things to sort of celebrate the sound. There's always a gush of wind when a train comes through the station, and they wanted to animate that. And so one did the wonderful, long, deep wood chime, sort of like a Japanese chime, that had a wonderful sound to it, and modeled those and had a whole series of them so that when the trains went by floors below, they would all bang into each other and have this so hopefully something not a cacophony, but a really nice, recognizable sound, in addition to some of the acoustic feedback information. Another student did a similar thing, but more with metal tabs that would lightly tap against each other when the wind would go by. You could actually kind of hear the wave as it would go through.
Slide 38, haptic perception and dash underfoot.
But also designing things that you could feel underfoot that might be set a stage, a palette or composition that might better guide you to the presence of the top of the stairs.
Slide 39, project one final review.
Then this is the final review where we had people on the jury, besides myself, that were blind, being there to have the students presented in a way that could be accessible to the sighted jury members, but also that couldn't see, and also some that couldn't see and weren't trained in architecture, and being able to explain things appropriately that way. We learned through the class the benefit of models over drawings is something that is far more universal and inclusive.
Slide 40, closing outside.
So I'm wrapping up here. And how are we doing on time? Okay, I'll wrap up.
Slide 41, disability awareness merit badge.
So if you can read this quickly, it's got a charming little thing. It's for a disability awareness merit badge. And for those that can't see it, I'm sorry, I've lost my memory of exactly what it says. But basically, it's describing that a person with an impairment, or I think they use the word handicap, isn't handicapped or isn't disabled until a barrier is put away in their way. So because you have a disability, you have an impairment, you're still good to go until there's a barrier. And it's those barriers that disable people. And reading that as an architect, that changes our role with disability And I think it changes the idea that most people in the profession have of our obligation to meet code. It's just about meeting code. You know, we have ADA, go meet that code, meet your state code. But really what it is we have actually, as an architect, as a designer, you have a profound effect on people using that space. And you have an obligation. It is actually the work that you do, the way you design, can either enable or disable the future users of that space, of that building. So it kind of changes this a little bit. I like that different way of looking at it and thinking about our role as architects.
Slide 42, ignorance is the enemy within by Darren Walker.
In picking up on that, I don't know if any of you have come across this. There's a really important message that was released by Darren Walker, the executive director of the Ford Foundation, who, when they rolled out a new initiative for their Ford Forward Foundation, a new inclusive foundation approach to who they would give grants and how they would approach that. And they were modeling it to be as inclusive as it could possibly be. And it's Darren Walker himself is African-American, he's gay, and he thought he owned this space, and he was on top of it. After it was rolled out, within a day, he started getting critiques, sharp critiques, people that he respected and didn't anticipate. And what it was is that in all that discussion about inclusivity, he didn't include disability. And he also then realized that their space wasn't accessible, that he didn't have anybody on his board that had a disability. And so it made him, in reflecting back on it, he thought back on the writings of James Baldwin, civil rights leader, about the power of privilege and how, you know, the privilege of those in power can be so overwhelming. It's great reading. I highly suggest reading that work, but also this letter. But what it was is he had to realize the power he had, and combined with the ignorance of his failing to anticipate people with disabilities, was perpetuating that sense of exclusion. And it was a gap. It was an absence in his awareness of inclusivity. So it's a very powerful writing. You can find it online. I highly recommend it. It's a good challenge to us all, and it's also really roots it strongly in the sense of civil justice, social justice, and makes it part of that larger agenda.
Slide 43, architects as gatekeepers.
So the point of that is that we're the ones that create those environments. And with that, I like to think of architects as gatekeepers. We get to decide who gets in, who gets out, who gets to use it, who doesn't. And I don't think too many of us would choose to exclude anybody. I've never met an architect that would say, no, I don't want you to come to my building. I don't want you, even if the greatest architect, most flamboyant, like, he would certainly want everybody to come and enjoy his fabulous work. And it's like, so then why would you not include everyone to do that? So it's sort of, I take it as a changing of the guard, different mentality. It's not just about code. It's about really reaching out and try to really widen that circle to get everybody in, everybody to work together on the greatest.
Slide 44, inclusive sports and recreation.
And a good example of that,
Slide 45, Sports Cycling Center,
is this place called the Bay Area Outreach and Recreation Program, or BORP, in Berkeley. And it's a program for people, recreation program for people with disabilities. They have a bicycle shed there. What's fabulous about them, they have a rule that if you can make a full or partial rotation with at least one limb, they can get you on a bike. That's crazy. I went by this place when I was sighted, an avid cyclist. I would go by it, and I thought this was like whacked out, you know, just hot rod bicycles. I had no idea what was going on. And then I showed up there, let's see, I think it was 4 months after I lost my sight, to go learn how to ride a tandem. And it's like, wait a minute, I know where I am. This is that crazy place with all these whacked out bicycles. But the optimism, the creativity, the not accepting, the not saying no, but to find, to have the will and to push through to make the seemingly impossible possible. So that's something I really celebrate through that organization. But also, I think it's going there.
Slide 46. Shut up and row.
Yeah, so shut up and row. Good way to end. I'm a competitive rower, and I'm in that boat that was in that video. There's eight guys in a row. Great thing is nobody's looking where they're going. They're all looking the wrong way. So slight optional. Once there, though, is you can hear when blades catch the water, the oars catch the water. You can hear when the oars rotate in the oar lock to go from feather when you're coming out of the water to go back to square to catch the water when you're up at the catch. You can hear the seats roll up the tracks as they go from the finish of the drive to come back up to the next catch. There's rhythm, there's all sorts of haptic feedback, there's the sound, and there's the wonder of being out on the water. And it's a sport that I can compete in with no adaptation, no accommodation at all. I think that is like the ultimate challenge for architecture, to make it truly inclusive, to make it truly multi-sensory, so that everyone can share in that space, in the enjoyment of this space, totally side optional. So thank you, and hopefully we have time for some questions.
Slide 48. 48.
Thank you very much, Chris. And yeah, we do have some time for questions. Anybody?
Clear all notifications buttons to activate. Press spacebar.
Do we have a water bottle here? Okay.
Chris, it was really interesting to see how much you used 3D printing. How many other areas do you use that? And is that like a daily routine for you, like iterating with the 3D prints?
It's not part of my daily routine. I wish it could be. One of these days, I hope to have one. So it's been, we used it a fair amount on that particular project. Lots of profiles, different things we've developed. We used it on a few other projects here and there. But I do think, especially when the opportunity or need is there to get to something that is more about that tactile, haptic, or just immediate experience, that is a powerful thing to use and can be done really quickly and do different variations to really get to that sweet spot. So it's a great tool. I hope the students here take good advantage of it.
Hey Chris, this is Andrew here. For your work, when you develop ideas, how do you go about building an alignment with the team that you work with to describe those ideas and to implement that? How does that communication work out overall?
Yeah, that's a great question. It depends on what it is and what phase of the project we're in. If we're in early stages, like that Washington State School for the Blind project, I'll think about the entry. I mentioned there was a second level for the Department of Blind Services. The whole entry sequence coming in, finding the stair, finding the elevator, when you got up to the next level to find the reception desk. When the architects, Malin Architects in Portland, they first laid that out, that reception area on the second floor, I checked it out and I was like, I reviewed the drawings in touch. I have an embossing printer, so I printed it out in touch, and I was reviewing it and realized, yeah, if you're blind, you're not finding the reception desk. It relied on an angle that was across the space, and there's nothing about that oriented to the way you would typically approach the situation. So basically, you went through a lot of wax stick sketches on top of the embossed drawing to come up with different strategies, different ways of arranging the space. And I started with a diagram of this is how someone would leave if you walked up the stair, this is where you would tend to go given sort of the blind strategies, whether you might go straight, you could perceive there's a wall to your right, you need to go some direction. And basically, and analyze, demonstrate where that thought point was, that decision point, and how you would strategize that, and then would show where they needed to go in the way they laid it out, and gave it that line to connect those points. It's like that's a line that you can't intuitively get there. It's a visual arrangement. You can visually do that. So I use the tactile drawings to explain, to critique the space, but then use the wax sticks to sketch up alternatives to then resolve those challenges, to make it more obvious or intuitive, and then support it through materiality you could have a sitting area that had the carpet, a hard surface in the main circulation area, and really worked it towards what was convincing to them so they could understand the challenge, but also sort of realize, oh, that'll work great. That works fine. There's a nice, had a nice design quality to it as well. So it's really being able to I use the wax sticks a lot, but there's other ways of modeling and demonstrating that and sharing it with others. And I can do that over Zoom, or I can, that whole project, Washington State School for the Blind was I didn't go there until it was built, even interviewed. It was during COVID. The whole thing happened during COVID. So there's no travel. So anyway, you could shoot digital photographs, have Zoom meetings, better in person, but there are ways to make that whole process accessible.
Chris, there's a question in the back.
Yeah. Clamping for Andrew, doing the dash to the back of the auditorium.
Thank you. This is Dominique with DBVI. As a blind person, I encounter a tremendous amount of spaces where, unfortunately, accessibility tends to be an afterthought rather than something that's from the ground up. I'm amazed at how many architecture students are in here, and just thinking that when you build something, from the bottom up, we need to start including that universal design for access, not just for people with disabilities, but accessibility helps everyone. What advice would you give to the students in here on how to get started, really looking at their spaces, kind of like along the lines of your lecture? What's one piece of advice that you would give in terms of starting to think about that accessibility? Thank you.
Thank you. No, one thing is it's somewhat of a challenge to the school. It's like, I think our profession need more people with greater diversity of all types. So that's including disabilities. You learn more from your peers than from a book or from a lecture. Having that one-to-one relationship is unforgettable. So that carries so much more weight. If you don't have that, well, we have a great program here with this blind design workshop. Get outside of your own experience and engage with other students that are being taught a little bit about architecture. And it's not just what you can teach them, but what they can teach you. It's about really sort of learn. As architects, as designers, we got to get outside of ourselves. And I think that's so much of our education is getting inside of yourself, get inside your creative space, your own special way of expressing things, but it's got to include people. And if we don't include people with disabilities and difference and cognitive differences and all sorts of things, if that's not in the DNA of the early ideas of the design, it's, even if you catch it later, if you have, let's say you have a disability workshop after it's been designed, it is too late. Then you're just sticking Band-Aids on the concept that's already there. Or what you really need to do, the real structural change, it's too late. Too much investment has been made. You can't go back and do it. So it's got to be at the lead edge, the foundational part of the process to really get it baked in properly. So students, get involved with this workshop that happens every year. Hopefully, it'll keep going. Seek out other opportunities. Volunteer for organizations that serve the needs of people that are different than you. Get outside of your own experience. Just broaden your awareness. And through that awareness, through relationships you can build one-on-one with another person, seeing their humanity. You have to sort of see past just the face, see past the cane, or see past the wheelchair to the humanity in those people to really sort of get the richness of the possibility of really creating those truly inclusive places where everybody can participate equally.
This is Matt again with DBVI. Since nobody else had a question, I'll follow up with another one. I've noticed a lot as a mobility specialist that when you come into a new space and someone's totally blind or visually impaired, it's so hard to understand conceptually what all is about you. And so I noticed you did those 3D printed maps for some of the spaces. But I wonder too, have you ever thought of like that awesome stair set you have? Because I too, under the blindfold, have found stairs with my nose, and it's very unpleasant. And I loved what you did there, and I can see it all in one big picture. And if there was like a conceptual model of that space, how cool that would be for a lot of clients to be able to touch that after experiencing it and then suddenly be able to see like a conceptual map, like a 3D map, like fully of the space. Do you ever do anything like that?
Yeah. There are things we can do. Just when we deal with clients that are blind, we do a lot of that. There was an interesting thing where the Lighthouse has a camp up in Napa, north of San Francisco, 140 acres up on a hillside mountain, and they lost half the property in the fires in 2017. And so we went on a massive reimagination, new master plan for the camp, and a lot of work. And the architects working on the project, they did a topographic model of the camp and located, for the hillside, so you could feel the hill and all the cabins and things that were there, and then the pathway structure and everything, made everything tactile. And there's this camper, this guy that he actually taught. He's retired. He taught he's blind. He taught adaptive technology at the California School for the Blind, and he had been going to this camp since he was a teenager. And now he's retired, right? And he loves this camp. He'd go there once, twice, 3, 4 times a year. When he put his hand on the topo model, it's like, oh my God. It's like it gave him a whole new understanding of the space of the camp, and he could start putting all the different buildings in better relationship. He could get to them quite effectively. He could walk around it, but it's sort of like having this very narrow. It's like the difference between knowing a city through a printed map and through a mobility app. It gets you from point A to point B, but it doesn't necessarily give you all the granular richness between here and there, or all those particular relationships. So that was on the scale of acres of land. You bring it into the intimacy of an interior space. There's lots to be learned from that still. And in a complex environment, that can certainly be a helpful tool. And there are those now that are tactile and audible, that as you touch things, move your fingers through the plan, It'll speak out what the function is there. It can help you locate things. They also have they can have Braille and raised characters within those maps. So there's a lot of work being done in that space today to create sort of tactile, audible maps and floor plans of spaces. Yeah.
Great. I think we'll wrap it up with that. Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you, everybody.